Now, tonight, Israeli forces dropped bombs on Iran's oil refineries outside the capital. The U.S. and Israel together are averaging as many strike sorties per day as the entire coalition during the Gulf War. Part of the reason Israel is able to send so many jets 1,000 miles from their bases in Israel to Tehran, the same distance from New York to Minneapolis, by the way, is because the U.S. Air Force has 100 refueling planes in theater. That's twice the number used during Operation Midnight Hammer.
Breaking news. Israel has now hit fuel storage facilities in Tehran, and that changes the feel of this war immediately. Because once flames are rising above an oil storage site near the Iranian capital, this is no longer just a story about military bases, command centers, or air defense systems. It becomes a story about energy, infrastructure, fear, and what happens when a war starts reaching into the systems that keep a country running. The Associated Press reported that pillars of flame rose above an oil storage facility in Tehran, that Israel confirmed hitting fuel storage facilities there, and that it appeared to be the first time a civil industrial facility had been targeted in this war. And that is why this moment feels so much bigger. Because wars always sound one way at the beginning. Precision, security, targeted operations, limited goals. But once the targets include fuel storage that supplies the capital and neighboring provinces, the language changes. Now people are not just thinking about front lines, they are thinking about shortages, disruption, economic panic, and what happens if the strikes keep moving deeper into the civilian backbone of the country. AP reported that Iranian state media described the site as supplying Tehran and neighboring northern provinces. That detail matters more than it may seem. A fuel storage facility is not just another building on a target list. It is part of the machinery of daily life. It keeps transport moving. It helps keep power, logistics, and distribution functioning. And when a war starts visibly hitting that kind of infrastructure near a capital city, the psychological effect is enormous. It tells ordinary people that this conflict is no longer happening at a distance. It is moving closer to the systems their lives depend on. AP is reporting that this may be the first civil industrial facility targeted is exactly why this strike stands out so sharply. But then it gets even more serious. Because this strike did not happen in isolation. Reuters reported that Israeli and US forces have been pounding targets across Iran, with the broader conflict rattling global markets and sending oil prices sharply higher. Reuters also reported that a source familiar with Israel's war plan said the campaign had been planned to last about 2 weeks and was moving through its target list faster than expected. That means the strike on Tehran's fuel storage is not just symbolic. It fits into a broader campaign that appears to be expanding in pace and impact. And once that becomes clear, the bigger question starts to emerge. What exactly is the end point here? Because hitting fuel storage near Tehran sends a very specific signal. It says the war is no longer just about suppressing immediate military capabilities. It says the campaign is now also touching the economic and industrial systems that support the state itself. And once a war moves in that direction, the risk of a much wider spiral rises fast. Oil prices react, markets react, neighboring states react, civilians react, and the longer it goes on, the harder it becomes to separate military pressure from broader national destabilization. Reuters reported that Middle East energy disruption has already pushed crude sharply higher and fueled global market anxiety. And that leads straight to the next problem, retaliation. Because if one side starts targeting fuel infrastructure around the capital, the pressure on the other side to respond grows immediately. Reuters reported that since the start of the US-Israeli air war, Gulf countries have already faced hundreds of Iranian missiles and more than 1,000 drones. In the UAE alone, official figures cited by Reuters said 196 ballistic missiles were detected, 1,072 drones were detected, and dozens of those drones fell within UAE territory even after most were intercepted. So this is not a war where escalation stays neatly contained between two capitals. The effects are already spilling outward across the region. And that is what makes the fuel facility strike in Tehran so dangerous. It is not just about what burns at the site itself. It is about what message the strike sends to Tehran, to the Gulf, to energy markets, and to every government watching the conflict spread. When a civil industrial site is hit near the capital, everybody understands that the threshold has moved. The war is becoming more punishing, more visible, and more entangled with the everyday functioning of the country. AP is reporting that flames rose over the facility and that Israeli officials confirmed the strike shows just how openly this threshold has now been crossed. There is also a military reality underneath all of this that helps explain why the tempo feels so intense. Reuters reported that in the first 24 hours of Operation Epic Fury, more than 100 US aircraft launched in a synchronized wave and the attack hit more than 1,000 targets. Reuters also reported that Israel separately carried out hundreds of sorties against hundreds of targets. So when people look at the speed of the campaign and wonder how the strikes are coming this fast, that is the answer. This is being carried out at a massive scale with air superiority, high sortie rates, and a huge target set. And once you combine that scale with a strike on a fuel storage facility near Tehran, the story becomes much darker.
این چیه؟ اوه اوه اوه